on. And then I can, Alan Oliver can explain a little bit more about the exercise that we're doing this morning. So I hope that the people that have already seen what I'm going to show for 5 minutes will excuse it. But otherwise, it's a matter of trying to bring everybody onto the same level. So if that's okay, I'll do that now. So just to explain the context of what we're doing in BIM4Housing, essentially, although we're called BIM4Housing and people immediately think of 3D models and the like, our major focus is on better information management. So all of what we're talking about this morning in terms of the information that we're going to be working with falls in that. So we've got 6 working groups which meet every couple of months, and they determine what information would make their jobs easier. And in many cases, it's information that, for example, the asset management team need from the construction team or from manufacturing, or the construction team need from development. So what they then do is determine what information is needed. And then we produce work streams. And this is an example of the work stream that we're about to kick into now, that then produce guidance and information that then is freely available to anybody in the industry to work with. So that's really our sort of process. And we've got about 400 people involved in this now, maybe 5 actually, who meet quite regularly in this whole area. We're also involved, I chair the Golden Thread Initiative Asset and Survey Information Group, and we were tasked with basically giving the government guidance in terms of what asset information was needed. And one of the challenges was whenever we talk to any experts, they'll say it depends. And it depends on the context in which you want to know information about a fire door, for example. So what we've done is created standard libraries for 250 asset types. And we're looking at that in the context of the building safety gateways and how that works with the REBA plan of work. So the groups are then looking at the different gateways to see what information's needed at each stage. And then the key thing is also, once you've got the building assurance certificate, then making sure that you can keep it. And that's why these inspections become so important, that we can evidence that the work, that the assets are safe. So the way in which we go about that is we've been holding roundtable workshops over the last 18 months or so. This is one of the in-person events that we did at Excel last year. And in each group, these were discussing a particular scenario, and through that we've produced publications for AOVs, cavity barriers, fire dampers, and fire doors. So a fire door one. So this is one of the examples that some of you in this meeting will have contributed to, is a definition of what a fire door is. Also, from the risk perspective, what risk is it mitigating? Then what do people do to it to stop it from working? And then what data do subject matter experts like you say should be being collected during the different stages in order that we can demonstrate that the building is safe? Then there's a problem. I'm getting an echo.
Sorry, George, you're getting a big echo. Just can you mute everyone, and George, you unmute.
George, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry. Okay, understood. So the point about this is that the fire door inspection itself needs to be done in the context of the whole of the compartment, and also even if that compartment works perfectly, we need to make sure that the smoke control system works and also the fire detection system. So, for example, we've got a similar session to this one taking place next Tuesday on smoke control. So the methodology that we're following here is to say, right, first of all, one of the big drivers at the moment is obviously getting drawings ready or into secure information boxes, because that's part of the legislation for high risk buildings. Now, having done that, and that's where a lot of housing associations and councils are at the moment, there's then the next step is saying, well, okay, it's all very well saying where those assets are, but it's also a matter of saying what the specification is, and that's the major thrust of what we're trying to do today. We've then got the ongoing inspection regime, so that's type 4 or the group 4 that are working today on that. Also, then there needs to be a mechanism for the landlord to be able to alert the fire rescue authorities of any of the key assets that have failed, and also relating those assets to the safety case going forward. So that's if you like the methodology that we're following with a number of major landlords at the moment. To try and standardize things, we're working with some big survey companies that are going in and producing point clouds for landlords at the moment. But rather than them just producing them as drawings, what we've done is we've created a series of standard objects that they can actually put into the drawings. So rather than just putting a symbol down, if they drop this CAD block down, it means that that becomes machine readable. So therefore, afterwards, when, for example, you identify that something's a 60 or a 30-minute fire door, that can be added subsequently to that initial base plan. And we're using some cool technology to actually, or the surveyors are, to capture the information. And at the same time they're capturing the information for the floor plans, they're also capturing 360 photos. So therefore, this is the sort of thing that they'll have access to. So we're looking to use this type of technology to enable the inspections that you do to actually be tied back to something that they can then manage going forward. So this is just an example of the floor plans that have been created for Origin Housing, all from different surveying firms, but they're all using the same methodology and the same technology. So that then brings us to a situation where when you're doing your door inspections, you'll probably be using a range of different software applications to capture the data, maybe ZetaSafe or whatever. And then what we then want to be able to do is then make it so the landlord has got something there that they can tie everything back to. So they've got something, irrespective of who's done the surveys, can then tie that back in and then keep the information up to date, including what the products are. So that's the journey that we're going down. So I'm now going to stop there now, and the purpose of, in fact, actually, I may as well. Yeah. So the purpose of this is to really build on work that Alan Oliver can explain in a moment what they've been doing, but they've developed this for the. In fact, actually, I'm going to stop now because otherwise I'm going to be stealing Alan's thunder. Alan, can I hand over to you? Are there any questions on any of that before we just hand over to Alan? Cool. Okay. Alan.
George.
Yeah. Could you explain what you've done with the NHS?
Yes, absolutely. I am aware that quite a few people here today have already heard this, so apologies if I'm saying the same thing twice. But for those who are hearing it for the first time, what happened a couple of years ago is that I had a conversation with the chief principal fire engineer for NHS improvement, and I said to him, why is it that although the NHS are probably the biggest owners of fire doors in Europe, they don't have standardised systems for inspecting them? And he said, well, we don't even have standardised systems for fire risk assessing our buildings. He said, why don't you write a paper on it? So that's where it all kicked off. So I put together a working group within NAFO, the NHS Fire Officers Association. We wrote a paper on how to inspect fire doors, which was peer reviewed by a lot of people, including, for example, the NFCC and London Fire Brigade. And we came up with a paper that everyone was happy with. We signed it off, and then we turned it into a reference document. And George has just shown you the front cover of the reference document, this contains actually 3 different ways to inspect fire doors. And what we wrote and what everyone agreed on is that you should inspect fire doors in 3 ways. You should inspect them to a very high pedantic standard when they're brand new and when you've got a golden thread of information available. When you're dealing with existing fire doors that have never been potentially inspected before to such a high standard, you've got to be a bit more pragmatic, not least because you probably don't have a golden thread of information available for it. And you've got to look at whether it's fit for purpose, whether it's suitable and sufficient for its location to meet various fire safety standards. So that is quite a complex procedure, and it depends on the type of door, the location of the door, the type of building, the risk of the building, loads and loads of factors. So that's, an interesting one. And then a type 3 inspection is when a door's already been either type 1 or type 2 inspected. So a type 3 inspection is basically a functional PPM inspection looking to maintain the standard of that fire door that has previously been type 1 or type 2 inspected and deemed to be satisfactory for its location. So that in a nutshell is what the reference document contains. And as George said, it also has a section 4, which is to do with holistic fire door management of an organisation or a building, because obviously fire door inspection is only one component of it. You've got to ensure that they've been designed as intended, that they've been procured as intended, that they've been installed as intended, and then they get managed and maintained for the life of the door and the life of the building. So I think that's it in a nutshell. George, is there anything I've missed?
No, I don't think so. No. So the overall, what we're trying to do is to also come up with potentially a standardized set of inspection procedures that that can be provided to in different software templates, for example, for different applications to use, so that can be an explicit set of instructions. So, for example, in the PFI world that we're heavily involved with, there's standards which you might be aware of, the SFG20 standards. SFG20 is developed by BISA, and that's the Building and Engineering Services Association, and those are explicit sets of tasks that you can then have a record against. Now, one of my sort of suggestions is that, in particular in fact, for all 3 stages, is it possible to come up with a similar type of thing? So maybe if I just show you what that looks like. Sorry, bear with me a second. So this is, if you like, what I don't think this is adequate, by the way, but this is the work instruction. It includes how long it should take to. Oh God, I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry, that's a fire dumper. Oh, that's it. Can you see my screen there? Right, so basically core competency, a facility manager for doing a check. This is a 1 month inspection. It's expected to take 15 minutes. There's a whole range of different guidance notes and things like that, legislation, connection. But this is what would normally go into something like Maximo or a Concept or Planet. So this is the actions that need to be done to a door leaf, the frame, looking at it from an operations point of view, glazing, and any obstructions or whatever. So, what I'm hoping that we could perhaps come up with something like that. That would be a reasonable output from this.
Yeah,
If
I think that would be relevant to a Type 3 inspection.
Yes.
Because I don't think there's any invasive elements to that, is there? From what I can see quickly.
No, agreed. And maybe, you know, my suggestion is that we might be able to follow. I don't know. Is there a similar methodology that we could do for inspecting a newly installed door? Or
yeah, I mean the methodology is given in the reference document. It's based on the way that BRE LPCB themselves inspect a brand new door, which does involve invasive elements to it.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is that if what we're going to be asking you to do in the groups, so we're going to break into 4 groups now or shortly, and in each of those groups, Jess, have you got the group chats, the links to the group chats?
Yeah, I'll post that in the chat.
Say again?
I'll post the links in the chat.
You'll put them in the chat. Okay, yeah. So what we're going to be asking you to do in a few minutes is go into the group that you've either elected to go to or we put you in, and click on the link in the chat, and it will open up a new Teams session, and hopefully with 4 or 5 people in each of those groups, and in each of them, we've also sent to you the text that is in the guidance document that Alan was just referring to there. So what we'd like you to do is look at the text to see if the text is acceptable from your point of view for fire door inspection for either the type 1, type 2, type 3 or type 4 activity. I think that's what we're saying, is it, Alan?
Yeah, I'm not clear where the link is. I don't know if everybody else is or I'm just being thick, but
We've not put the link in the chat yet.
Right, okay.
Yeah, Jess, what can you put it in the chat so everybody can see it? Don't click on it yet until we're ready, though. Okay. So those are if you open up the chat dialogue, you'll see the different links. So what we would ask you to do is spend half an hour, so 30 minutes, looking collectively at the text. If one person could pull it up and share it, and then everybody else can then be maybe discussing it, and maybe you comment on it. We'd also like you to record that session, or Gis will pop in and record it so that we can capture this afterwards. And then we can come back together again, maybe about 12 o'clock. And then any comments people have got, we can then discuss it going forward. We've done lots of roundtable workshops before, but this is a bit new in terms of creating a new thing. So please be gentle with us. We're learning as well. Is everybody clear about what we're asking them to do, or has anybody got any questions?
Is there a George? How do you know which group you're in?
You should have had an email to that effect. But
yeah, George,
Steve.
George, just stop a minute. It would be a lot easier if I just read out who's in which group and they go on the right group.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay, Gis.
Yeah.
Right, share the page with the who's in what group.
Steve, would you mind leading you're going into group 3. So if you would act as a coordinator on that, I'd be grateful.
Okay.
Have you got that, Gis?
Yep.
I think you're in group 3, actually.
Okay, so group 1 is Danny Murphy. Can you make it any bigger, Gis? Right, okay. Group 1, you can see there, Danny Murphy, Elliot Dawson, Sharon McCullough, Audrey Hess, Nathaniel Rackham, Jim Hannon, Kozumi Kazi, Anthony Hollingsworth, Antonia Woodward, and George, you're leading that, aren't you?
Yep.
Okay, so you guys, if you click on the link for group 1, and George will have you away. Group 2, Alan Oliver.
Jamie is also in group 1.
Sorry?
Jamie is also in group 1 because he recently requested to be in group 1.
Okay, Jamie, you're in there as well. Group 2, Alan Oliver, Brian Ferguson, Gary Bage, Sad Siddiqui, Ian Kavanagh, Colin Markov, Dennis Monday, Damon Bowen, sorry. That's group 2. If you click on group 2 and go through, and Alan will be there for you. Group 3, Daniel White, Laura Smith, Raymond Ozagulo, Steve Aldridge, Paul Williams, Scott Kenzie, Tom Foxwell, Mark Costello, Paul Bray, and Keith. I've put you in there as well. Okay, so we're just left with group number 4.
Richard, will you lead group 4? I'm going to jump off onto
yeah, you jump on 1
now.
We've got about 6 or 7 people that we haven't got a group for.
Yeah.
So shall I just take those into group 4 because it's more general?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody who's left who hasn't been given a group, go into group 4.
Unless they want to
unless you want to particularly go into another group, then join another group.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'll see you in group 4.
I still don't know how I get into group 2, sorry. Can anybody help me?
Make sure that in each of the groups they've got the text to work.
Richard, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Alan.
Yeah, how do I get into group 2 from here?
Can you go into the chat and click on the link mentioned type 2?
Right, I'm double clicking, and I can't see a link.
There's a link associated with type 2. Can you see that?
No, I can't actually.
Yes.
Could you possibly send me a separate link? Is that possible? And I can come out and
Yep.
go back in again.
Yep.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
How we doing?
I think we're doing okay, Richard. Group 2's just finished, so we've come to rejoin the main group.
Group 4 is here.
Right.
So we're just waiting for 3 and 1.
Did Group 4 have a good meeting?
We had a very good meeting, actually, and I think we came up with a couple of interesting points. Overall, definitely, yeah. Obviously, there was no disagreement, I would say, with anything. But I think there are a couple of interesting points, possibly more about emphasis or nuance than anything else. I suppose we're going to report on those now, are we? When the others join us. Is that
I'm
what we're
not
going to
sure.
do?
I mean, I'm assuming that George is going to take the lead on what we discuss. I think
Yeah, I'm
he'll
sure.
probably
Yeah.
he'll probably want an overview of the different groups and how we all did. I would have thought. A number of people have had to leave, though. Unfortunately, I
How
think
did you
we'll
get
be
on with
down
your
to
group, Hannah?
reduced numbers. Sorry.
How did you get on with your group?
We got on really well. There was, definitely a good consensus. I think we all agreed that again that there has got to be a change in emphasis, and there has got to be additional words to take into account that it's got to be fit for purpose for housing. We mentioned composite doors and the fact that composite doors are not in the original healthcare document because they don't really exist in healthcare, but
Right, okay.
that's an elephant in the room we can't ignore. So
Yeah.
Maybe I don't think there was anyone in group 2 that was an expert on composite doors, or someone. There wasn't certainly anyone willing to take the lead on the required words for composite doors. But if we have a composite door manufacturer amongst the overall group, that could be really useful.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we'll check that out. Absolutely. I'll be surprised if we don't. We've got quite a good spread.
Yes. I know George is already aware of this issue. Composite door you're talking about, George.
Oh,
George,
good.
so,
Okay.
George, you're group 1, aren't you?
Yes.
Right. So 1, 2, and 4 are here.
Not 3.
Not 3 yet. No, we're just waiting for 3.
Okay. Should we alert them that they need to come back?
Sorry, I was just going to say, you mentioned composite doors. Did you also mention steel? Did that come into? So veneer,
Pop in there, George.
Veneer, composite, and steel are the 3 areas that we're sort of working.
Steel doors are mentioned in the current healthcare document, but certainly we would want steel reviewed in terms of housing as well. Yes, for sure, Mark.
Okay.
Sorry, George has just gone to round up group 3. They were in full flow. They really were.
Okay.
They're coming now.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but that was a real learning experience for me. But I think it was very useful. Could we just so Alan, how did your group go?
It went very well. I think we all understood that type 2 fire door inspections is very difficult, and we were all in agreement that you need a higher level of expertise probably than in any other type, because it's quite challenging in that you're dealing with an unknown door. You won't have any golden thread of information, and yet you've got to try and assess its fire performance. And we were talking about the practicalities of doing that in a typical housing block, and in particular concerns over the required skill set and whether that level of skill will be available. But in terms of best practice, we have got to assume that doors will be in type 2 inspected to the required level of competence, but competence was certainly discussed a lot. What we agreed is, in terms of actions, is that that I would continue to be the leader of group 2. I did try to get someone else to volunteer, but everyone said how busy they are, which I fully understand. So I said, well, the first action, if everyone could email me their thoughts and any additions in terms of words or alterations in terms of words, and then as soon as that can be done, I'll look to include everybody's thoughts and comments and create a new draft version of type 2 inspections, and then we'll go forward with that.
Cool. As far as Group 1's concerned, we're quite a small, tight-knit group. But what we identified was that there's 2 sections to your document, Alan. One is the introductory sort of page and a half or whatever. Let me just probably show it. And so I think this is general to all the different asset types. The point that that Sharon McClure was making was that we're this page here, the first page, up to the establishing competence, that's all really about making sure that the responsible party has got the right quality of information from whatever's being installed, not just fire doors. So that's something that we're concerned about, and also that this regular audits thing, there's a concern that it could be taken that having the regular audits, that's all fine, it's happening, whereas what Sharon was saying was that that needs to be far more controlled. So the responsible person needs to have been aware that not just that the audits have been carried out, but more importantly, have they actually, how many have passed? Because that's an issue.
No, that's a really, really good point.
Yeah. And then moving on from here, then what we've got moving down from here, this is more about the individual checks, and this is something that I think that Danny, who's from one of the door manufacturers, he was saying that they've already got a passport process that they operate, which captures this information for the landlord that can then be inspected. So what he's agreed to do is go away and look at the things that they have in their passport to make sure that they're covered in here, and maybe anything that they cover that isn't in here can then be added in, which I think is a good way forward. So
definitely.
that's my sort of feedback, and he's willing to share that. So if Jim Hannon and others who are installing, doors as well. I think Jeremy, you might have other ways of that you do use as checklists to do the validation, which I think that we should be doing here. The other question was, if the installer is a qualified installer, does the door need to be inspected by an independent?
Can I interject on this, please?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, it's okay. My hand's up, but please don't apologise. On section 1, yeah, type 1, compliance inspections of new fire doors. The word in there, if a fire door is a door that is manufactured and installed in a third-party certification schemes, blah, 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 blah. Effectively, that's inferring that a third-party certified installation will generally be acceptable. Now, I mean this with no disrespect to any third-party certified installer who is in this group, but I've been doing this job now for knocking on 10 years, and I've got 2 guys that work under me who also inspect sites. When it comes to a new build site, a new installation, we are yet to visit a compliant new install.
Yep.
We have never visited a compliant new site, a new installation. And as a body with, well, as an interested body, but also a body with, I would suggest, some influence, I personally feel that third-party certification is great. It's a step in the right direction. What we really need for fire, not just for fire doors, but for any fire component, any critical components going into a building, installers should be individually qualified. I'm sure none of the people in this group would permit a plumber who, let's say, yeah, I know a bit about gas boilers. You wouldn't let someone like that fit one of your fit a new boiler for you, or work on your boiler that had broken down. You wouldn't get in a taxi with a driver who'd seen his brother drive for a few hundred miles. You know, I'm being a bit ridiculous there, but you understand what I mean.
Yes.
I think as a body, we should be pushing for individual qualifications. The qualifications exist. They've existed for a long time, but they're not taken on. It's that old thing, qualifications and training are expensive, but they're not as expensive as doing it incorrectly. And
Thank you, Ian.
I think that's an important factor.
No, I agree.
Ian,
and in fact,
I can't. Sorry. I can't talk about. Sorry, George. I'll let you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just reinforce that, because I was talking to a council last week. They're replacing 3,500 fire doors, and I believe that by people who are qualified, and yet they've found less than 20% of them are compliant. So
Yeah,
it's marginally better than your example, Ian.
Sorry, Josh, but are they qualified, or are they third-party certified?
No, I'm agreeing with you. The point I'm making is that what I'm suggesting is possibly the only way of really doing this at the moment, until the industry upskills and is adequately competent. Maybe it is the case that all fire doors, all new installs, have to be audited or inspected by an independent. Is that too far?
I don't believe it is. I believe in all instances. I mean, I work for a number of clients. I suppose you would call us the unofficial clerk of works.
Yeah.
Where we check literally every new install, because then they're not confident of third-party certified installers.
So that might be a takeaway from this. It may be something that we suggest. Does anybody on the manufacturing side or anybody else have a view on that, just before we move on?
My name's Andy, and I do. Ian does the same training as me with the installation training, and Ian didn't say, but there is a national occupational standard for installing the fire doors. Can anybody hear us?
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ian is correct in everything he says, but I think everybody individual should be trained. I think that is the way forward, because we can't not train people and then just say we're going to inspect everything. I think we need to do both.
I agree.
Sharon's got a hand up.
Hi, Ian's comments, no one took offence, Ian, because the conversation we were having in group 1 was the concern that the document that's been created, if someone reads that, they're more or less saying that they've ticked a box because they've got a third party certified scheme member, and because there's been some inverted commas audits, there's a false comfort that the audits will have given you the green, the green light. And the perception versus the reality is that we are sitting on the other side of the fence. I'm a third party certified installer for passive fire products, and everyone was probably nodding their head to yourself, when you were making that comment. Anybody who's actually on the side of on the site know where the deficiencies are. We are creating a document for people who are going to be sitting on the other side of the fence receiving these buildings. And what we don't want to have is a statement at the beginning of any documentation that we've been privy to, leading people into that false sense of security. The third party certified schemes are not fit for purpose. The ASFP are trying to go through the whole skills, knowledge, experience, behaviour, and they're trying to have individuals competent as well as the management staff who are controlling their works. And our conversation was primarily exactly as you said, and the work that needs to be done in all the properties just now across the UK, there's far more work than there are competent people to do that work. So but the projects won't stop. The projects will proceed. What they may do is they may just take the people who are available to do those works. So the inspection regime becomes far more critical if that's the case, because there's not enough people who know what they're doing being asked to do the work that we are now banding as, and quite rightly, life safety.
Brilliant, thank you, Sharon. Alan, we obviously want to get feedback also from Group 3 and Group 4, so just bear that in mind. You got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, if I'm allowed to speak. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, Sharon, I agree with every word that you've said. And if you believe that the words in the healthcare document are not strong enough, I mean, it does at the moment say that it may be prudent for those responsible for the building handover, preferably at an early stage in the installation process, to do spot checks to verify that everything is to the scheme standard. But if you want to spell out that everything in the garden isn't rosy and that there are a number of third-party schemes that are not as good as they should be, or as you would like them, and the devil's always in the detail, people need to be understood that different third-party schemes work to different standards. That's what this is all about. We need to be putting these words in, Sharon. So I would welcome your thoughts on how we can word put the words into this document that you believe are as they should be.
No, I think if the system was fit for purpose, the text as it's shown just now, I would have less of an issue with. I don't want people who are on the other side of utopia, who don't see us for the flaws that we have, reading a document and getting cold comfort because it's not going to stand up. Whereas if we are doing the pincer movement just now, which is trying to educate people that are building users, we're also trying to raise standards for installers and inspectors, for everything across the board before it actually gets to be handed over. Then,
Sure.
Until that language is appropriate for the systems that are in place, I think we have to err on the side of caution and make it clearer that, in an ideal world, if A, B, and C are carried out to the full extent of blah, 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 then you have an appropriate building. But I just think that some of the documentation could lead people into a false sense of security. And it's our job to batter on a wee bit.
Sorry to cut you off there, Sharon, but thank you. The Group 3, which was the ongoing maintenance, can somebody talk from that perspective? Shall I pick on somebody?
Was it me?
I think so.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, from the ongoing one, it really boiled down to simplicity. These have got to be the major checks for the fire door should have been done beforehand, and now we're going around to check that the door is effectively operational. Is it going to do what it's been designed to do? And that needs to be quite simple. But is the checks in place to make sure that, because we know what, with all due respect to any clients that's on here, and some of my clients will take the cheapest option available to them.
Absolutely.
And if the cheapest option is to have a regular quick fire door check, they will take that. But if they haven't had the checks done prior to that, what they're actually checking is irrelevant. So it's kind of the golden thread, isn't it? Where, you know, I think from my perspective, you know, a building should be handed over fire as compliant to whoever's done that, and that then hands down to the regular maintenance for the people that are in control of that building, that can then go in and do their checks to make sure that that door is operational, and that needs to be quite a simple check.
So to achieve what we're trying to do on this particular task, Steve, which is really use the wording that's come from the NHS document broadly, did you get a chance to look at that, or is that something that's the next step?
It's the next step for us to go through that.
Okay. And does anybody else in group 3 have an observation?
I suppose from my point of view, it was that sort of, you know, the whole, you know, where you've got weekly checks being done using the existing trained staff within that organisation. Paul was talking about the way he does it within his organisation, and it sounds really good, really robust. But from my point of view, with an ongoing inspection, is there a plan for a certified inspection to be done, I don't know, every 12 months? That's sort of longer term, like an MOT type basis, once a year by a certified person. So that was the sort of question for me. I just find all the conversations are really good, and I think everyone's sort of coming up with really good comments. I just think the construction industry has just gone to a mess. I was going to swear there, but it's gone to a mess. The old-fashioned clerk of works, you know, that when I was on the tools was a pain in the backside. They're just not there anymore. Building control, people that really knew their stuff are not there. And I think everyone on this group is saying the right things, but it's design and build, and it's the actual knowledge with the people that are on site managing the projects. And again, I'm not giving an answer to it. I'm just, you know, all the good work that these groups are doing. It's the bigger picture of construction. It's lost a lot of what it had. Maybe I'm wearing the rose-coloured glasses, but you know, it's just lost a lot of what it's been over the last many years.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I'm just conscious that we've not heard from group 4 yet. So is there anybody in group 4 that could step up and just say...
I've got the notes.
Oh, thank you, Richard.
Yeah, no, well, ours is a bit different from all the others in that you guys were talking about how, whereas ours was more about what. Also, we didn't have as many pages to cover as you did.
Yeah.
For that reason, we've gone through it line by line. Now, broadly and overall, yeah, absolutely. We agree with pretty much everything. One of the first things that came out, it talks about fire doors. We were unanimous that it should be talking about fire door set, because to include, and particularly in a situation where you talk about for moving forward. Then I mean, should I just run through these little points?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, quickly.
Okay, like 4.1, we need the budgets and timings first before we can actually you could actually set a plan, but it's chicken and egg really. because, and also economies of scale will obviously come in. 4.2, fine. 4.3, it doesn't really go into competence there, and that the competence needs to be ensured of the key players. 4.4, just a typo. It mentions outpatient area, that obviously needs changing. 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, fine. 4.9, we had a little bit of a disagreement on this one, but a couple of people were very strong. It does require ongoing PPM, because at any point it might have external intervention, for example, an electrician on the wall. But then someone else pointed out, yes, but if you look at the wording, that's kind of covered. So I'm raising it just because maybe it's not as clear as it should be. 4.10, about the training and fire-door training, that needs to be for everyone. I think you need to stress it's for everyone. It's not just tenants. It's appropriate training for anybody, training for the role, and encouraging staff and making a culture change for those staff. Whether nobody knows more about those doors on a daily basis than the cleaners, but they need to be encouraged, and it needs to be easy for them to report small faults, because they need to have enough knowledge to know that it's relevant.
Okay.
Or to check at least.
Yeah,
that's
Richard, Alan's got his hand up.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, Richard. I just wanted to point out, and sorry if I'm stating the obvious, but people looking at changing the words or adding words for type 3 and for the section 4. The big thing, in my opinion, that's missing at the moment that wasn't relevant to healthcare, and especially when it was written a couple of years ago, is the new Fire Safety England regs. Now, any fire door management scheme for housing going forward has got to take into account Fire Safety England. That's mandatory, and it's the same for type 3. Now, sorry if I'm stating the obvious, but nobody's mentioned that, and that is a big thing that's got to be addressed. Everyone's got to understand that there are lots of words currently missing, and Fire Safety England has got to be written in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think earlier, right at the top of this section, you talk about making the plan. I mean, I think it's literally a question of with regard to, as you say, fire safety, England, etc. Because it's framing the context, isn't it?
Yeah. So within our group here, do we have people that have got the expertise and the knowledge of the Fire Safety England new legislation that could contribute to that? Is there anybody here that has got that expertise?
No.
I'd like to think that would be. I'm willing to assist you on that, George.
Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
So I'm willing to assist you on that, George.
Is that Chris?
Jeremy?
Jeremy, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy. I couldn't see who was speaking. I apologise.
Sorry, it's Paul Bray as well, George. I'd be interested in assisting with that part as well.
That'd be great. So, okay. If is there anybody else? I think if Jeremy and Paul could get together on that, that would be really helpful. Okay, we're coming to the end. I don't think we've cracked all of this yet, which is amazing. I thought we'd didn't really think we would. Do people think that what we've been doing here is a worthwhile thing to start to move towards?
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Paul, I noticed that Paul Colclough, you're from Trafford.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard very positive things over the last couple of years about Trafford, and obviously it was Pete Patton that plugged me into you. Do you feel that what we're doing here is something that you'd be happy to continue to contribute to?
Yes, most certainly, yeah.
Cool. Okay. I just picked Paul out there because not for any other reasons, but we've not spoken before. But so I think my sort of thought is if people could now, you can see the importance of the documentation or the words, as it were. So I'd urge you to maybe take another look at those and maybe modify them if needs be, so that we can actually produce at least a draft that we can then start to share with people. And then also, the other thing that's missing is photographs and images. Now, I think it was Paul actually that provided some really good examples.
Yeah.
Have you got them available, Paul? Or
Yeah, just a report from ZetaSafe.
Yeah.
So we're having our flat entrance door inspections taking place as I speak now. So yeah, I've got some photographs there. Could certainly send over to you. I've also got some communal door pictures as well, which are really good as well. Some of them.
And it can. I imagine that others have also got that that type of information. I'll just show you what Paul's sent me, and I'm sure that this is in an application called ZetaSafe, which presumably we could, you could provide access to this data, because it's saying it's copyright of ZetaSafe, but at the end of the day, I guess it's yours, isn't it?
Yeah.
So could this information be made accessible in a machine readable form rather than just a PDF, do you think?
Yeah, you can have it as basically an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get two reports. I get one with the pictures, and then I get a separate Excel spreadsheet just highlighting, which makes it a little bit more easier on the eye, especially when you're forwarding it onto the relevant departments to take care of the repairs. So what I've done at the moment is, because there's still a little bit of work to do around the business as usual. So ideally, in the ideal world, you would like an automated system where you go out to site, you identify a repair, and then that automatically raises that repair within the housing system in the relevant department, given the risk level. So if it was a door closer missing, you'd have that as an immediate kind of action. So you'd have that level. So in the ideal world, that's what we'd like. But at the moment, we're kind of getting these weekly reports through. I've got the reports of the individual tower blocks. So basically, I'm just kind of completing the communal inspections and then basically sending the repairs over as a job block, as raising one job underneath that specific block.
Yeah.
The repairs operative to go out there and basically crash off. I think one of my blocks had 11 repairs in one tower block. So literally they were like a just door keeper, a just door closer. They were kind of really small repairs. Literally the joiner could literally take care of them within a few hours, basically 5 or 6 hours for one block. Obviously you get the odd repair that requires a little bit more time, but that's where we're at the moment. Like I say, ideally going forward, I would like an automated system, which obviously will cost money and time as well to put that into place. I'm sure most organisations have got the same kind of issue, really. So, but yeah, that's where we're at the moment, and it's going well. We've got it off the ground, and yeah, it's like I say, plenty of work to do. That's for sure.
Cool. Tom, you've got a comment to make.
Yes. Thank you for letting me come and join the group. What I'm trying to find out is, you go do your inspections. Those inspectors are certified inspectors. They find problems with the doors. And like Paul was saying, you now have to make corrections to door or repairs. Once the repairs have been done, do you re-inspect the door? In other words, you've inspected it, found the deficiencies, you corrected the deficiencies. We don't know who corrected it. Is that a certified installer correcting it, or is that just the maintenance guy running up and taking care of it? So that door then needs to be re-inspected so that all the doors end up with a valid inspection form.
Yeah, it's a good point, Tom. That I mean, from our perspective, from the flat entrance doors, we have got a certified contractor. We don't actually at the moment go back and re-inspect that. I suppose going forward, you'd take a percentage maybe, rather than all of them. But anyway, that'll be up for discussion. But regarding the communal doors, we're kind of looking at our in-house. We're not. not supposed like a certified contractor as such. It mainly our in-house repairs team who are not fire house accredited. An element of trust there, hasn't there? If you get somebody who's accredited, then you know and like I said, there's no harm in maybe doing a small percentage, maybe 5% or even less, just as a little taster to show that you are just maybe doing the odd little check here and there.
Absolutely, on occasion. But I mean, the old adage, you know, who checks the checker? Are you going to go and check that the person that went out and verified it is, you know, has verified it correctly? Where do you stop?
Where do you end? Yeah, I agree.
You know, I mean,
Ian, can I just clarify my understanding of what you're saying? So when we're talking maybe about somebody, you know, council replacing 1,000 fire doors, for example.
No, but Paul wasn't referring to that. Sorry, Paul was.
Yeah, I know. No, that's all right. You're talking about just
minor
maintenance and fixing.
Yeah. Now, okay,
No,
if it's an apartment entrance door that wasn't closing fully, and someone went out and remediated it. Now, in our surveys and reports, we deem that to be P1, a priority one. If a door doesn't close fully, then it's a priority one. It is an urgent requirement, because a door that isn't closed is, well, you might as well take it off its hinges and throw it away. So yeah, if you've got a priority one repair, maybe that's one that you would want to verify and just go out and make sure, yes, the door is closing. But in general, I just don't think it's feasible or required in general.
Keith. Yeah. Thank you, Ian.
No
Keith.
Yes, it's a question that might turn into a suggestion. I don't know. Is there a concept of compromising a complete fire zone because there's a failure within it? And so, so if one of the doors in a corridor with 10 doors fails, is there a concept of saying that the whole fire zone has failed until everything in it is up to scratch?
I think that depends on each individual application, I suppose, personally, and it depends on what the failure or the non-compliance is. I don't think it's a simple solution or statement.
Well, if one of the doors in a corridor it fails, then surely that compartment of that corridor is then failing.
It's compromised, but it depends what the failure is, doesn't it?
Right. It's compromised, right? Okay.
It depends what the non-compliance is, and you go back to the risk-based argument, don't you? What is the risk posed by that potential non-compliance? And I don't think
it comes back to what level of fire compliance is required. If it was in a critical care or a theatre unit in a hospital, that could be a major issue. But the reality is that as soon as fire doors are inspected and maintained or whatever, you know, somebody bashes it and it's not 100%, is it? So, you know, what level of fire compliance is required?
Yeah, can I ask one more question, please, if I may? We've come across a concept in FM of inspections, the period of inspection differing according to the location. So a busy corridor might have a monthly inspection and sign off, but in a quiet corridor at the back end, they sort of go back to 2 or 3 months. Is that an accepted procedure? And who determines? I mean, there's a formal determination as to the frequency of various fire zones.
Well, the stated frequency, as far as I'm aware, the only stated sort of statutory guidance is that all fire doors should be inspected every 6 months. But again, it's a risk-based thing, isn't it? I mean, I've got some clients that I visit on a 6-monthly basis, and other than the people who go to look at the fire dampers or perhaps the electrical distribution boards, I know that I'm the only person that's opened that door in the last 6 months. So realistically, while 6 months is the inspection period that is determined by the client in this particular case, realistically, it could easily be 12 months because that door it's never used. Now, when you look at a busy hospital street, they're the main corridors in hospitals, particularly ones where you've got the porters going with their, you know, the beds, their refuse trucks and all that sort of stuff. A pair of doors in a busy street realistically, I mean, they can change dramatically from one day to the next. So again, it's a risk-based thing, isn't it?
Sorry to interrupt. The Fire Safety England, I'll put it on the chat. Regulations do specify timescales for inspections of fire doors in buildings over 11 metres. So it talks about 12 months for fire doors for blocks of flats as a minimum, no more than every 12 months, and for communal doors every 3 months in buildings over 11 metres. And then talks about basic guidance, and that's the bit that I mentioned in our group where I was frustrated by the government not giving a timescale for buildings of under 11 metres, because that leads to a interpretation by the responsible person that could be more than 12 months or a time period which would allow for damage to occur. So there is a statutory guidance in the new regulations.
Yeah, but the new regulations are a bit of a step back, really, in that there's no requirement there for competence.
I think it's implied when you link it right back to the fire safety order, the responsible person should employ a competent person to assist them in fulfilling their duties under the fire safety order legislation. The fire safety order was amended by the Fire Safety Act, and then the Fire Safety England regulations come from the Fire Safety Act. So they're all linked. So you could find, you might consider it tenuous, but there is a link about employing competent persons.
I would say very tenuous, personally.
Yeah, but when you're in a court of law and you haven't employed a competent person to do that work for you, that's when everything will fall down. And this, unfortunately, is when these things occur, is when it ends up in coroner's court or an inquiry. Yeah. But unfortunately, sometimes that's the only, let's say, motivator for people that maybe don't focus on health and safety as a primary consideration for their organisation.
Okay, I've let it run over because, quite frankly, I think the knowledge sharing that was going on here is principally why we're here. So I hope that was okay. And obviously, some people have had to drop off, which is very understandable. But you know, I'd personally like to thank you for the effort that you've been put in. I mean, we're all volunteers, so I'm trying to work the best way of taking respect of your time. The next step is I think for us to maybe if we could each take a look at the wording in the draft document, and as we were saying earlier, a lot of it is relatively, I think, straightforward to say what the tasks are. If people have already got like Danny, if you've already got methods of that you use already, and then if you could look at procedures and tasks that you do as your checks, if you could compare what you do with what is in Alan's guidance and comment on that, I think that would be valuable, Alan.
Yeah.
And should we set up another meeting in maybe a couple of weeks' time to follow up on this? Would that be something that people would be interested in doing, so that we can try and close this off?
Yeah.
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 Good. Okay. Well,
Yep.
I think we can organise that, Richard, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely,
Now,
absolutely.
if you're aware of anybody that is knowledgeable on some of the other key asset types, and I'm thinking things like smoke vents, penetration seals, and also when I say smoke vents, I mean smoke control, which would include dampers and things like that. We've got a session next Tuesday on that. And if you know anybody through your community that specializes in those areas, that would be really helpful if you could put them in touch with us. The other one is penetration seals we want to look at, because these are all elements that go to make up the other parts of the compartment, which I think is critical. And if we could also that the other one is fire alarms and the other key asset types. So if you know of people that are you people, I think most of you are specialists in fire doors, but if you know of people in your community that you could put us in touch with, then please do.
I was talking about inspecting there, George.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
This including AOVs, automatic opening vents as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, you include that. Okay.
In fact, the AOV one is that's the one that was starting
That's
next
Tuesday.
Tuesday. So we've got one of the manufacturers is involved in that, and also we've got Swegon as well, who make dampers and things like that. But yes, AOVs definitely. Good. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Any other questions? Any other observations anybody's got before we close off? Have you found it useful?
Yes.
Yes, very informative.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Great.
very useful.
Good. Thanks very much for your time. Cheers.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
thanks.
See you
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.